Let's start with you, Maximo Torero. Maximo, 2.6 billion people are currently not accessing a healthy diet according to FAO. What are the main drivers?
Hi, thank you so much. So what we observe in the last SOFI, as you said, is 2.6 billion people don't have access to a healthy diet. And that's related to supply and demand issues. On the demand side, of course, is affordability, capacity of income to be able to afford a healthy diet, that minimum cost healthy diet. And the important thing is how we can do activities that will also increase income of people so that they can be able to afford this healthy diet. But on the supply side is why these diets are so healthy, so costly. Specifically, you go to a continent like Latin America. Why is the continent that has one of the highest cost of healthy diet when they are a big supplier of food? And here's where we need to open and analyze carefully what is going on behind and how we can do to reduce this. For one side, if we link to better production, is we need to increase and produce more with less, but we need to keep producing more because we need to diversify the diet. The main characteristics of a healthy diet is diversity. And that requires that we produce not only staple commodities, but also high-value commodities, and also the blue economy, fish, aquaculture. So that will require changes and innovation that will allow us to have a bigger supply. Today in the world, we have enough calories, but we don't have enough diversity of foods that require the other elements that are important for a healthy diet. So the supply side is extremely important. And within the supply side, also we have the problem of food loss and waste, which is a problem of better production, a problem of better nutrition. It's also a problem of better environment and better life. Why? Because food losses are from the producer to the wholesale market included. Waste is from the retail to the consumer. In the waste side, we know we are around 19% of food is being wasted. A lot, no? But where is mostly being wasted is being wasted at the consumer side. Not necessarily at the retail or the supermarkets or the restaurants, but most of it is being wasted at the household side. That means behavioral change, demand change. When we look at losses, we normally used to assume that losses happen at the post-harvest level. But when we go in more detail with data, we find out that losses also happen at the pre-harvest level and left in the field. So that is linked to science, innovation, and technology. So both elements, supply and demand, I think will be central to be able to minimize these problems.
With these conversations around the four betters, we don't want to only understand what does better look like, but what actually is happening to make it possible. So can we just start with the supply side? And we heard from Beth, and you've just mentioned as well, about producing calories, obviously, but improving quality of food, access to better diets. Can you give a specific example of work underway to improve the quality of food and the diversity of food?
Yeah, look, I think there are several dimensions that we need to look at very carefully. First of all, we produce very few types of commodities, which is what we mostly consume. And that needs to be rethought, that needs to be changed. Now, but why is that happening? Because the incentives are aligned to those commodities. So there is a lot of subsidies that are related to staple commodities. And not necessarily we have something similar when we look at high-value commodities like fruits, vegetables, and so on. And that's the agenda of repurposing, of how we can repurpose the support to agriculture and how we can identify areas which will help to contribute to that. That's one part of the puzzle. The second part of the puzzle on the demand side is that we have to create a change in behavior. We need to look at how we can work with consumers so that they can make better choices. And that is linked to information of what they are eating and what are the returns to what they eat, and if they are eating what they really need to keep the micronutrient diversity that is required. But also is to put incentives through policies, through regulatory mechanisms that will allow us to minimize the consumption of super processed foods, for example. And the third dimension is trade. Trade creates diversity. Trades allow us to increase the diversity of the food that we access. We know that. We just published our SOCO publication, which is on trade and nutrition, and clearly shows that trade helps to include and to give access to that diversity of foods. But of course, there are countries, and especially countries which are fully import dependent, that could create other negative externalities that we need to look at carefully. But clearly, we need to motivate and incentivize trade. And finally, the important thing is the balance. No? It's not only just everything has to be imported or everything has to be locally produced. I think the balance is what will help us to move towards a more diversity of diets.
On the demand side, FAO estimates there's $12 trillion of hidden costs in the current food system, 70% of which is health-related. Part of that is behavior. Which strategies are underway to change that?
So it's important to understand that when we look at true cost accounting, we are trying to look at what are the externalities that these type of foods are creating to the world, both in the environment, in health, but also social. No? And what we found, as you said, $12 trillion, and a big share of it is health, which means that people are consuming types of varieties of foods, of commodities, which will create an externality in non-communicable diseases. And that's an intertemporal issue. That's an issue of tomorrow. So I eat something today, and as a consequence of that, I could have diabetes, I could have other types of diseases tomorrow that will affect my life. And that has a consequence to the governments, that has a cost to the governments. So I think the best and most important thing to start working is to bring as much as possible evidence. The work that we did on true cost accounting through 2 consecutive SOCOs, which is one of the flagship publications of FAO, was exactly to try to make people understand through a common methodology what were these costs. It was not to transfer this to a price of a final consumer. It was to try to understand and bring more light to policymakers that the type of support they are giving to certain types of commodities could create a consequence in the health issues, could create a consequence in terms of environment, and could create a consequence in terms of the social cost of that. So I think it's really important to find ways in which we can create these policies that will align the incentives to minimize those potential consequences.
A very, very quick word from Maximo, because I think that what we want these sessions to be about is action. And I'm just wondering, could you, something that we can leave with and take away but follow, an FAO initiative that you're excited about that might resolve some of the issues that we've been discussing?
Let me bring, I think what we have heard is super important. So our goal right now in better nutrition is to achieve access to healthy diets. And that's an adequate, diverse, balanced, and moderate diet. But also it's a diet which is safe, and it's a diet which is delicious, because that's the only way you will minimize food loss and waste. And that is all compiled already in the historic document of the right to food. It was there already. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We're just working to achieve that. But if you violate and remove completely the right to food, then there is nothing you can do. So we can do a lot with science and innovation. We can bring a lot of support. But if you break the right to food, that's it. So we need to create a transformation. And to resolve the right to food is peace. Simple.
Maximo, our panelists on better nutrition, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.